Let's go. What's up, Tool Sidekicks and henchfolk out there in the Geek Nation? My name is Noel, and thank you for joining Fresh Floppies. What is Fresh Floppies? This is a review show specifically of single-issue comic books that are out on the stands today. We're talking the freshest of single-issue comics. Not graphic novels, not collected editions, absolute editions, compendiums, omnibuses. No. We're just talking about the freshest of floppy-issue single comics that are coming out this week. Normally, I'm joined by a very articulate, hilarious, fun co-host by the name of Johnny Destructo of Johnny Destructo's Hero Complex, located on 4327 Main Street in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But he's under the weather, so I am going to have to power through. I'm going to have to power through and try to be as engaging and entertaining and as little as possible. I think I'm going to have to do that as little as possible to make sure that this stays a fresh, engaging, fun conversation about some of the freshest comics that are coming out this week. I would love for you guys to just play this and listen to it on your way to the shop. So like maybe there's a little something we're going to talk about today that you weren't thinking of picking up, but now you might. I think the first book that we should talk about this week, we're gonna start at an ending. So a year ago, I guess, because it's issue 12, but a year plus ago, a juggernaut of a comic book came out. And juggernaut, I mean by like just media footprint of everyone talking about it, called BRZRKR. Maybe you didn't know it was called BRZRKR because there's no vowels. It's just BRZRKR. Co-written by Keanu Reeves and Matt Kindt with art by Ron Garney. This book was hyped more than any other book that I remember in a very long time, especially not by the big two. And it finally comes to a close, or at least this first big story or big chapter comes to a close. It's issue 12. It comes out today. Keanu Reeves, Matt Kindt, Ron Garney. I want to talk a little bit about the series thus far. I don't know many people in my normal circle that are current with it, have continued reading it past like the 4th or 5th issue. Not for any reason other than there's lots of stuff to read, and I think there was a couple of delays. Is this book good? I think so. Maybe. Kind of. I read the whole thing, finished today. It is 12 issues with maybe only about 5 to 6 issues of story. This was a really interestingly paced comic book. I recommend it. It's good. But I can't help but feel like they stretched it real thin for that 12. Especially the way that this ending is backloaded. I swear halfway through, like issues like 5 through 8, barely anything seemed to happen, and it was a very like ephemeral and existential comic book with very little action. And then all of a sudden, this 12th issue is like a trade paperback's worth of story and plot points. It's like they took forever in the first act. Let's just say the first act was like 8 issues of this comic, and then this last 12th issue, so much happens. And so much time passes, and so many things occur. It's kind of wild. Like, I like where it ended up, and I might be interested in continuing after this. But it was a long stretch, and then what's the terminology? Hurry up and wait. Like it was just, but the opposite of that. Yeah, no, it was a terrible analogy. I don't think that works. It's just it was a long road, and then a very, very speedy climax, and I'm still processing it, honestly. Presentation, Boom Studios has some of the best printing. Like I think last week we talked about Dark Horse has just awesome feeling presented books, like the paper stock, the matte finish. It doesn't feel like a comic book that will fall apart in your hands. Boom Studios follows in that suit. It's very, very well constructed book. But of course there's 48 covers, and that's that. But it's a very pretty book. It's a solid book. Ron Garney's art, I don't know if it's the strongest I've ever seen Ron Garney, but it's still very effective storytelling wise. Over the last 12 issues, it's gotten a little looser. for better or worse. But yeah, I think I'm gonna. My first impressions were like a shrug emoji and like, yeah, it was fine. But I think it's gonna sit with me for a little bit because there were some things that happened in this book. I'm not gonna lie, I lost the thread a couple times about just quantum physics and gods and deities and stuff that it's not that it went over my head, it was just probably the most unengaging way to present the information. And then there was like a 2-month wait before you kind of continued the conversation. Often too, I'm in the position of being like, hey, less is more. It's a visual medium, so let the art do most of the talking and don't overwhelm me with info dumps. I really wish this book had a couple of info dumps because there's things that happen between panels or just like with side glances that it's like, no. This isn't like normal human dynamics that I can understand by just a visual. You're creating a new kind of ordinary world of immortals and gods mating with humans and passing the power and a cult, and like it's new information. So them being very cavalier with how they present it just felt like there were pieces missing and or I just didn't get it. So if you're reading this, keep reading it. You might just be blown away, but I got to sit with it for a little longer. So I think that kind of puts me in the fresh enough camp. I don't think it's very, very fresh. This book kind of fell off in excitement as well as just in pacing. But it also isn't barely fresh because it's a solid comic book. These are all good creators and they know what they're doing. And they did technically land the ending for me, but it really did feel like a lot stretched out and then just like chunked in at the end. So I would just like fresh enough, I think we're going to land on for me. The second book I'd like to talk about today is Superman Lost, #1, or it's Superman Lost, #1 by Christopher Priest with art by Carlo Pagulian. I believe the last time I saw Carlo Pagulian has done tons of stuff, but I always associate him with I think some Hulk stuff with Greg Pak. But either way, I'm a little bit of a latecomer to Christopher Priest's work. I really have been enjoying it. I also enjoy just how sometimes esoteric it is. So this comic, Superman Lost, is about Superman and Lois being them. I feel like it's obviously, or I wouldn't say obviously, it feels like it's out of continuity because they don't have a son, and it seems a little early in their marriage. They're both just investigative journalists, and he's on the Justice League. But he goes on a call one day and comes back immediately. Goes on a call with the Justice League one day, comes back immediately, and seems spaced out and not all together. And Lois is like, you just left. What's going on? And he was like, well, I've been gone for 20 years. And then all of a sudden, Bruce Wayne shows up and kind of explains what just happened. This book was wonderful. This book was really, really cool. So it is a Justice League mission that kind of goes awry in some very specific way. And Superman gets lost, comes back, but no time has passed for us. And it sets up kind of maybe telling the story about what happened that past 20 years and what kind of person he may have come back as. But the way that Christopher Priest writes this, I have a soft spot for competent people or very knowledgeable people, like giving examples of how knowledgeable they are or how smart they are. So unfortunately, a trope of superhero comics is a lot of the times the dialogue in action is just like, get them there, over here, oh my god, we got this. But let's say you watch something like a medical show or like ER or something, and they very confidently are talking about what they're going to do in real time or, in the ER about like this condition and this many things and stat, blah, 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 just throwing out a bunch of terminology that you don't know as the layman. I don't need to know what those things are and what that terminology is to understand that you, the character, are very knowledgeable and you're doing something that's beyond my skill set in order to save this person or do this, right? So like that idea of like I'm watching AR and medical jargon's flying fast and loose, but it doesn't necessarily need to know what that means. Christopher Priest does that with the superhero genre. So you've got like Green Lantern and Wonder Woman and the Flash, and they need to stop a military skirmish on sea and in air. So like a submarine and a couple of fighter jets. And in normal superhero comics, you would just have like somebody say, I got them and I got this and good job. But Green Lantern actually talks about how like, oh, well, these specific types of jets are terrible with small types of scans, so I'm going to do this and do this. And Wonder Woman's just like, with my jet, I'm actually going to mess with the wind speed of this to make sure that they're not able to get a lock on. Like they're getting into the nitty gritty of actually accomplishing something that seems impossible. And I got to tell you, it was so fun to read. And then they get into the whole like kind of timey-wimey craziness of how Superman may have been lost for 20 years, and it is so in the weeds, it's almost hard sci-fi. But I'm so down with it by then about, just having a good time reading smart people be smart that I'm like, yeah, let's go. Of course I understand quantum physics now. But I gotta say, this was a really, really fun read that kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. I don't always associate a writer like Christopher Priest with the Justice League or Superman. But every time he starts a project, it's always worth giving a shot, he's just such a good writer. So I loved this. I thought that this was super fresh, incredibly fresh. Give it a shot. Book presentation, I mean, it's DC, so the covers are slightly thicker, and then there's also an option for, I think almost every comic book now from DC has an option of a cardstock cover. It's $1 more, but it's just a variant cover. I think they've been doing open orders for variants for the most part, and then just a couple of really special ones. But I think one of the variants for this is one of Joe Quesada's first. It might be Joe Quesada's first variant cover or any work for DC, which I think is really fun. And it's a really beautiful cover too. But yeah, no. If this had fallen off your radar or you just had no idea that this book was coming out, I loved it. I thought it was great. So I would highly suggest giving it a shot. The next book that I want to talk about is the latest addition into the Massive Verse. That is the shared universe that's located inside of Image Comics, spearheaded by Kyle Higgins and his creative colleagues. This book called No One is co-written by Kyle Higgins and Brian Buccellato with art by Geraldo Borges. Yeah. This is, like I said, the most recent addition to the universe. Other books include Radiant Black, Rogue Sun, The Dead Lucky, and miniseries Radiant Pink and Radiant Red. I'm sure there will be more, but either way, this is kind of this whole universe is almost it's shared, but none of the books really touch each other other than the Radiant books. Like the Radiant Pink and the Radiant Red miniseries kind of relate to events that are happening in Radiant Black, but honestly, most of these books you could read alone, which is a feature, not a bug. But this one specifically just came out today. It is a 10-issue miniseries with a complementary, adjoining, additional podcast. So this book is about a vigilante, a hacktivist. I'm not exactly sure the full story yet. We were only really introduced. Who some time ago had in Pittsburgh had launched the Accountability Project, which was essentially just like a list and the receipts for a bunch of people in positions of power and how they should be held accountable for insert question mark here. 2 of the people, I think, were killed then, and then the killer was called yada yada. I forget what Richard Rowe, I think the name of the vigilante was. And since then, there have been a couple of copycat Richard Rose copycats of the vigilante that are kind of finishing the list of people on the Accountability Project to make them accountable. So it is purely a detective story, a modern noir, because our main characters so far are the caught vigilante in prison, they're a disgraced police chief, I believe it is the rank, and a investigative journalist who was trying to not cover this story but keeps kind of getting dragged in. One of the ways in which she's being dragged in is to develop a podcast for the newspaper. And the podcast you can go listen to after this issue. So every issue will have a new episode of the podcast. Think like Serial, but done by a local news organization that is actually working in the city that these fictional events are occurring. So it is a very satisfying read. There's a lot of information in here. The back half too of the issue is some fake Wikipedia pages of some of the players, some court paperwork. Like, it really is a bit of a full immersive meal about like this case and all of the comings and goings, and it's definitely setting up a really fun mystery. How it fits into the Massiveverse, I don't know. Who cares? It's just kind of fun, which I really love about these books. This thing that Kyle Higgins is building, is creating. When people in comics especially say something like shared universe, the implication, especially historically, is that all of these books are going to connect to each other to lead up to a thing, to do this. And it's like, it's really 5 miniseries, but it's really 1 through 15. Like they're all in lockstep with each other. But what it's starting to feel like specifically is that Kyle Higgins and his friends have just created a sandbox. And inside this sandbox, we've got a bunch of different genres, and you can pick and choose as you go. Like Radiant Black is a pure superhero book in the same vein of like Invincible and Spider-Man. Rogue Sun is it's supernatural. It's magic. It's New Orleans voodoo and sorcery, but through kind of a bit of a superhero lens. And this is purely investigative journalism and catching a killer, a noir mystery. So I love the idea that a lot of these books are. Oh, and then The Dead Lucky is kind of a what if a tech company controlled a city and how it would become a fascist state. These are all very different books, but they all kind of exist in the same world, and it's really fun to read. It's shared, but I would almost not use those words, because if you're talking to a comic book reader, they have a very specific kind of notion as to what shared means. Like, oh, I'm not going to start reading now because I'm not reading the 5 tie-ins. No, screw that. Just start one of these books because they are their own kind of vibe, and they're all really strong so far. Presentation, solid book. It's not a cardstock cover, but it's a thick book, nice thick paper stock. Doesn't fall apart or bow or anything like that. It's a great floppy. I picked up the cover C, I think it is. Yeah, cover C by Mark Englert, which is actually it's designed to look like the advertising screen, or advertise page, or the save screen for the podcast, which is funny. And I haven't listened to the podcast yet, but I will probably after I record this, because I'm kind of all in. This is fun, and especially like that it's a 10-issue miniseries. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I love endings. I love it when a story is going somewhere. When I'm reading something like Spider-Man, I know that it's going to go on forever, but there should be a story jump on and drop off points. There should at least be some facsimile of an ending. It's when things are just stretch out forever, and it feels like that I just I start to shake. And these Massiveverse books have not felt like that. And the fact that we've got like a nice contained miniseries that is specifically a mystery, I'm assuming we're going to find out the keys to the mystery at the end of this. So that's great. Woohoo! This is super fresh. I thought that this was an incredibly fresh book. I would highly suggest giving this a shot, even if you are not up to date in the massive universe, the Massiveverse. If you just like crime noir and smart people being smart, and journalists doing their jobs, and multimedia projects with a bunch of back matter and side stuff, yeah, man, go to town. I think this will be right up your alley. You'll enjoy it. Now, I did not finish Christopher Cantwell's Iron Man run. I think I read the first 15 or 16 issues and just haven't picked up like the last trade yet. But a very wonderful part of his run was the relationship between Hellcat, Patsy Walker, and Tony Stark. And he seems to have continued her story, Patsy Walker's story, into a miniseries, which came out today. Hellcat #1 of 5, I believe. With it's written by Christopher Cantwell with art by Alex Lins, Lins. Never heard of this artist, but I like their work. But yeah, I know nothing about Patsy Walker Hellcat, Patsy Walker Hellcat, or just Hellcat, aka Patsy Walker. Other than she's got a dope costume. She used to be a child actor, and her mother wrote books and comics and stuff about her, so she comes from money. So that's pretty much all I knew about her. But then in reading Christopher Cantwell's Iron Man run, and other people could probably have told me this, or a Wikipedia page could tell me this, but the character is, I guess, deep-seated or deeply rooted in supernatural ongoings in the Marvel Universe. I guess she was like married to Damon Hellstorm and stuff, and has telepathy. Like there is so much about this character, and I know, like, being a jaded older reader, I'm sure it was a bunch of plot points that they threw at this character over the last like 40 or 50 years. And then you've got somebody like Christopher Cantwell coming in and like, I'm going to make it all count. So this is very much a supernatural spooky book, but with Hellcat. And it's great. It's a really fun first issue. It's the art by Alex Lins is it's very well done. Like so it's a sketchier, kind of more fluid style, but the panel layouts are really, really kinetic and really, really engaging. Fight scenes with jagged panels to the point where it almost looks like it was a very defined laid out page, and the energy from the skirmish on the page just kind of shook up the panels. That's kind of what it feels like sometimes. Like they're almost. It reads like strategic chaos, which could have gone very wrong. However, with this layout and the way that this story kind of is presented, it's a really fun read, and the art I really dug. I not gonna lie, it is not typically the style that I'm drawn to, but it was really good. The story here is things are going a little wonky in Patsy's life since her relationship with Tony, and the supernatural stuff is kind of coming a little bit harsher to the surface, to the point where her abilities are very wonky. So she finds herself next to a very, very mangled body of somebody that she knows, and the cops arrest her, asking her many questions, and she doesn't have all the answers because she doesn't remember everything that happened, but knows that it was supernatural, and she's pretty sure she didn't kill this guy. And that's kind of where we jump. It's an interesting issue. It very much kind of suffers from that issue 1 of a miniseries feel, where it's barely more than a cold open, which, your mileage may vary, but for me, it was a nice taste into what this miniseries will be like, and I think I might finish the whole thing. I will finish this whole miniseries. I love little 5-issue Johns, because they're in and out, and when they're strong, they're very satisfying. But yeah, I'm hoping this turns out well. And Cantwell is quickly becoming a writer I really, really, really appreciate. The Iron Man stuff that I read was great. I know that he has a Namor miniseries. I haven't had a chance to read yet, but I'm really looking forward to. His Doom stuff was really fun. He gets these characters in a way that doesn't shy from the very silly aspects of these characters. Like, he just presents them forefront and pushes through them in a way that's very refreshing and referential. It's fun. It was especially fun in the Iron Man run, where like one of the main characters was Frogman. I mean, it was great. and and that's the same kind of vibes here, just with a little bit of a supernatural hell bent. Presentation. The binding is fine, but it is a flimsy comic book. The cover is barely thicker than the pages. I probably will complain about that every week, but it is what it is. I wish they were a little bit had a little bit more meat on them. In regards to the printing process, other publishers do it, but for some reason, not for some reason, I know the reason. Marvel publishes so many books a month that it just, some of them are a little flimsier. I wish they weren't, but that's where the prestige and collection formats come in. I don't know what to tell you, but I would say that this book was fresh. I wouldn't go as like hardcore as like super hella fresh. It was a fresh book. It was my expectations were mid. And I was surprised not only by the story but by the art. This is a fun read. If you're in the bag for this creative team and or just kind of Marvel horror books, this might surprise you. I would give it a shot. Speaking of horror books, the last book I want to talk about today is the second issue of Harrower by Justin Jordan and Bram Revel. I am not a giant fan of horror comics. Not because I hate horror. I freaking love horror. I just don't know it always works for me in the printed format. For me, the most fun aspects of horror, especially in film or in audio, is playing with the senses, like the music, the sound design, the goopiness, the visceral kind of energy of horror, and not even gory, just the visceral energy of horror and how it just gets you to react is something that often isn't able to be captured in just a comic book or just on the page. So I don't typically fall in love with horror novels or horror comics, but I keep searching and I keep trying. So like the last one that I truly loved and really liked was Maniac of New York, because it took the premise of like a Jason kind of character inside New York and took it to like the next natural conclusion, or where you can't kill him or stop him, so you just kind of live with it and treat it like almost like a weather patterns of if the maniac appeared here or there, and look out for maniac sightings, or closer to Halloween it's like maniac season. Like, I thought that was really funny, but it also took the premise seriously inside. So it was a horror movie, it was a horror book, but it also knew what it was. So like when you strike that balance, it worked for me. And I gotta say, Harrower was really fun, like really, really fun. You've got a supernatural killer type of character that is summoned. Don't really have all the details yet, but it shot out of the gate in the first issue. Gave me a really, really fun twist at the end. And then this second issue is basically the title character, the Harrower, who has a great design, just kind of going to town on a college party. There's story around it, but the centerpiece of this issue is a melee inside of a house party, and it's something. it's a lot of limbs and slashes, and they keep paying off that twist in the first issue where you've got a character in there who may not have the most altruistic and earnest motivations. Well, they might be earnest motivations. They just may not be to the benefit of the rest of the group. Just hanging in there, and it's a really, really fun book. And it ends with another nice little button at the end. This is a fun book. Presentation is just below top notch. It's a Boom Studios book. They always have very good paper quality. Binding is great. It is a regular sized issue, and it's just a 4-issue miniseries. So if the pace of this book keeps up, it is going to be a shot out of a cannon, kind of all takes place in one night fun romp, and I'm here for it. This was a really fun book. Am I a horror comic fan now? Oof, that's I have to come to terms with that with myself. But either way, if the Harrower and Maniac of New York are my entry points in. I can't lose. So yeah, I would give this this is fresh rating. This is a fun book. Issue 1 is still available to find, and it's 2 issues into 4. I throw this on your pull list if you like horror books. This is fun. This is just pure fun. Do it. But yeah, fresh for me. There's no other books that I'm going to review today. But before I go, there are a couple of like other things that I haven't had a chance to read that I'm very excited about this week. If they're on your radar or not, you should look them up. First one being The Forged, #1. This is the new book by Greg Rucka and Eric Troutman with art by Mike Henderson. I have no idea what it's about, but the description was wild. It makes allusions to heavy metal, and 2000 AD. And it just sounds like a bucket of fun, and I love this creative team. I'm down with this. Anything Greg Rucka gets me to think, anything with this description of crazy sci-fi action, I'm also down. So it's a win-win. The 2 of the other books that I'm really looking forward to this week is the 3rd issue of Justice Society of America. This is Jeff Johns' return to the JSA. If you want to call it that, it's a very different kind of book that spun out of Flashpoint Beyond, which he did with Jeremy Adams and Taylor Sheridan. I'm totally getting that wrong. Either way, it's a direct follow-up from that book. Some timey-wimey stuff, some future past stuff, all kind of spinning around the JSA. This is a classic DC book. It's been fun to read so far, so I'm looking forward to the 3rd issue. And then the last one that I really came out of nowhere for me, well, not came out of nowhere because it was solicited, is Secret Invasion #5 by Ryan North with art by Francesco Mobili. This book was cool, has been cool. I was not hella excited about, like, I one of the pet peeves of ours is that they're giving limited series or events the same names as previous limited series or events, and it's like, well, which one are you talking about? Are you talking about Heroes Reborn 1990 blah blah blah? Are you talking about Heroes Reborn 2021? Are you talking about Secret Invasion 2007? Are you talking about Secret Invasion? It's annoying, but that this was written by Ryan North piques my interest, and that it was meant to be a smaller stakes, or not even smaller stakes, the stakes are pretty big, but a smaller story. Like the secret invasion of it all is really just kind of a couple of characters trying to deal with it before it gets bigger. So this has been almost like a fun little espionage thriller in the Marvel universe, like happening on the side. And the last issue #5 comes out this week, and I've been digging the hell out of this. This is really, really fun book. It's not what I was expecting in a good way. Our leads are Nick Fury and what's her name? Oh, why am I blanking on her name? She was in the movies and everything. Maria Hill. And it's great. This is a really, really fun Marvel book that I'm excited to finish. So those are just a couple of things that I really enjoyed. But everything that I got to read today, that I got to read for this week, it's a lot of bangers. Even BRZRKR, that just didn't necessarily do it for me. It's like it was halfway there. There's merit in there. There's a good story in there. I just didn't love how it was paced out. So I'm if that's the lowest rung for me, this was a solid week in comics, and I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I did. So I won't prolong it anymore. I miss my best friend, my co-host JD. I hope he feels better, but the show must go on. And thank you for enduring what you just listened to for the last 35 minutes of my voice going through all of these comics. I hope that I've inspired you to try something else, or validated your decision that you were all excited about something and holy shit, this is it. Noel liked it too. Yay. Either way, thank you for joining me. We'll talk at you guys later. I'll see you later this week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the CultPop Network, home to podcasts, live shows, and a whole lot of fun stuff for every flavor of fan. Follow us wherever you find your favorite podcasts, and be sure to join us live every Wednesday night at youtube.com/CultPopGo at 8 p.m. Eastern. While you're there, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you'll know when we drop new Thunder Rounds and episodes of Fresh Floppies, a spoiler-free show about single-issue comics released each week. Until then, we'll talk at you later.